So William is the owner of a beautiful house we can see here, Iford Manor, but he's also the vice president of the European Historic Houses Association. And we are very privileged to hear from him because you've been, the institution has existed for a long time and we are just starting out. And he's going to talk about the next generation, followed then by Akshita from India, who is a representative of this kind of next generation. So thank you very much, William.
Well, thank you. I hope you can see my screen. I think I'd just like to start out really by reminding ourselves of the importance of cultural heritage. Because for a start, we can forget that heritage is the only thing which we have, which once it's lost can never be regained. I mean, you can't buy age, you can't buy a backstory, you can't just invent the history of a civilization. So make no mistake, our heritage is nothing short of that, an integral means of telling the story of how we came to be where we are today. Now, it's not the whole story, of course, but it is the bit that we have that remains tangibly with us. And heritage comes in many forms, of course, from the languages we speak to the art we create, and today we're speaking about the built heritage. Over 40% of historic buildings in Europe are owned by private individuals. So if you strip out the churches and municipal structures from that total, it suggests that private owners of heritage amount for an absolutely enormous number of buildings. And that obviously increases the importance of the role that they play in maintaining those structures. And we as those private individuals are blessed with the privilege of being the guardians of heritage today. We are the guardians of a long, unbroken chain of history. And it rather puts the focus on the important role that we do and how we create sustainable solutions for the future. It also, in and of itself, raises up the importance of passing on that heritage and how we do it. So today I want to explore what makes for a successful private historic house and some of the learnings that I've made from my work in historic houses across Europe with regard to succession. Too many houses haven't made it through the last centuries. Sometimes they're destroyed through conflict, but in modern times they're more often than not a victim of a lack of support or neglect, or the construction of a bypass, heavy taxation, whatever it might be. So the very survival of our houses is, to an extent, an initial benchmark of success. We learnt in the UK to our cost in the 1960s how fragile our heritage is. Anyone who, I wasn't around at the time, but anyone who remembers Sir Roy Strong's exhibition, The Destruction of the Country House, will attest the loss of sometimes several great houses a week being hauled down because of the costs. Why? Well, at face value, a decimated rural economy, a highly disadvantageous political environment, high taxation, all that sort of stuff. But dig under the surface and you find that the root cause is a little simpler. Imagine for a moment you are a historic house, or any piece of heritage for that matter, but houses today. You have no power to look after yourself. You are essentially, you have to find somebody to look after you. So being irrelevant is the precursor to your destruction. Once the population, and particularly the power in Parliament, see no protection, then you're done for. You are lost. You are merely old clutter. And that's the heart of the problem with heritage. It only survives when it's relevant to somebody, to enough people, to a community, to a country, to a town, such that people actively care about it. And our goal, when acting on behalf of our own heritage, must therefore be to ensure that our heritage bears relevance over time. This could mean a lot of different things. It could be relevance to a local community, or it could be relevance to a resource for academic research, or it could be as a commercial space or a way of interpreting the past to understand the future. And doesn't Alexandre de Vogüé's audio guide do exactly that? All of these are different ways to connect. Relevance can be so many things, and each house has its own challenges and solutions. But it is exactly that variety which makes these houses and histories so fascinating. So we've mentioned this long chain of history already, but this doesn't only apply looking back. If survival is our goal, then we must be just one lamina in the future chain of history. And the ability to form a long view and to change slowly, consistently, and respectfully is at the heart of a sustainable approach to heritage. We are, so to speak, driving our course in an antique car. While the flash kids are revving it up in a Maserati, ours takes a more careful handling. With all cars, of course, and particularly old cars, you only get to crash them once. So you have to drive very carefully indeed. So in considering our own properties, we need to think on a long cycle. Our forebears planted trees, for example, which they never saw to maturity, but we get to enjoy. And so it is with our own approach to these buildings. I think it's what sets us apart, actually, from modern business practices, which are increasingly short-termist. So combining long-term thinking with a respect for history and a key eye to remaining relevant is no mean feat. But certainly historic properties and private ownership have two key advantages: agility and cross-generational knowledge of the world around us. Our ability to change with the times as private owners, as king of our castle, literally in some cases, means that we can be innovative, collaborate more easily, and flex with the changes in the political, social, and economic wind. This advantage has always existed, but I think it's only in recent decades, with the rapid advancements of the pace of life, the ability to travel, to change the course of one's existence on your mobile phone in a matter of hours, that it has moved from being useful to being essential. My experience of speaking with historic property owners in Europe tells me that as we grow older, we become less adapted to change. We don't like change as much. I think we all appreciate that. This is not a criticism, it's just a function of growing into one's own life experience. By contrast, the younger generation is usually working away out in the community, getting a job, less shackled by the constraints of living in, or perhaps with, you might say, a historic house. And today there's a greater importance than ever of working across generations. The experience of the older generation's consultants and as a safety net, combined with the enthusiasm, the vigour and the innovation of the younger generation to create new ideas and uses, in short, to keep the property relevant for the next 50 years, is something of a killer combination when it works. And the rise of social media as one of the, if not the, principal means for advertising and communicating with communities today obviously gives the younger generation something of a unique knowledge. I'm already at 38 starting to lose track of my 2-year-old child's knowledge of technology, which is very concerning. Succession planning has two axiomatic elements. Firstly, succession, the need for a next generation. This might be linear through children or grandchildren, or it might be someone else, family or otherwise. But it needs thinking about, and it can no longer be assumed. Whereas 100 years ago, the eldest son was kind of set for life. You know, you inherited a huge house with a staff and enormous acreage, and it was all sorted. Today, it's less of a best case scenario and more of a management challenge, which interrupts a perhaps international career, moving a young family from its established home, disrupting a spouse's career too, etc., etc. It's a wonderful problem to have, don't get me wrong, but a plan is really definitely needed to ensure the heritage doesn't only bring responsibilities, but also a lifestyle to be enjoyed too. And the second bit of succession planning is the planning. In my experience, the majority of families find this bit rather less enjoyable than the creation of the children in the first place, if you see what I mean. Here's my family. My mother purchased Iford in 1965, downsizing from a much larger house in the middle of England following a family tragedy. Having inherited at 15 a house which the family built 350 years prior, that's Aynho Park in Oxfordshire, she felt a very strong sense of responsibility to her history, and so she wanted to find a new home for the family. And our home at Iford is that new home. She ran and built the estate for 50 years with the support of my father until my wife Marianne and I took over in 2016. Now, with regard to the planning bit, for us, succession planning, in my case, I was blessed with a mother who actually had no problem at all talking openly about money and taxes and mortality, all the sorts of subjects that we as people living in old houses traditionally can't talk about. But as a consequence, we always had a very open approach to discussing how to manage the estate in the future. And it was really an amazing gift when they handed over to us in our mid-30s, because we still had the energy to make changes. And we had we had that vigor to do things. And as my ma said, she might hate it watching me do things differently, but do it anyway, because everything has to change. And I think this was the major benefit of handing over the reins during tenure, rather than the traditional handover at a funeral. It doesn't mean it's easy for either party. We certainly don't always agree, and the conversations weren't always straightforward, but they were essential. And my mother once said to me that if we don't do it now, when will we do it? And I think that was quite relevant. She was 77 when she handed over, and she's still fit and active and actively involved in the business, but ultimately doesn't have the responsibility of signing the check. From our part, we had to make some changes at a respectful but pretty rapid pace to get things up and running. We've redrawn the boundaries between home and business, public and private. We're just at the end of a 2-year construction of our new cafe, which is coming along, opening in May. And we've done all of that to support really the garden visitor business. This is what they're coming to see. Now, every house and estate is different, so innovations to ensure relevance are always going to be different too. And bear in mind, one person's innovation might be blindingly obvious to somebody else, so I speak quite broadly here. Ways of being innovative and relevant, let's see, what have we got? So from the local, such as our annual Butterfly Day for primary school children to get them engaged in nature, our small socially distanced concerts last year, just at the end of government lockdown, we were able to do some concerts with everyone sitting 2 meters apart and all very safe. And, it was so appreciated by the local community just to have something to do. A lot of goodwill built up on that level. At the national level, you see many historic houses using their parkland for festivals, ranging from the more well-known ones like the Leeds Festival in the UK at Bramwell Park, or the Festival of Lights at Longleat. Beautiful way of using a property in the winter when it can be difficult to open, especially in the UK when it rains all the time. There's even a marmalade festival at Dalmain in Scotland, which has proved extremely popular. And these are examples of profitability for historic houses through, small innovative opportunities. Provenance is an important word at the moment, where things come from. People are really searching for meaning in things that they do and eat. Many estates, ourselves included, offer a restaurant and cafe dining with food produced on the estate and from local producers. Here you can see Cartwright House in Ireland's outdoor market, coffee shop, farm shop, all serving through the pandemic. They've been able to make this COVID safe so that their local community in the town have really connected with them as a central hub. And that again is that sense of relevance to a community. What else? More innovative uses such as using a cookery or language school at the Château de la Mesure in France. 2 generations again there working together. Thibault, our friend, and his mother, who is a teacher. Of course, Alex's audio guides, what they do at Vaux-le-Vicomte, and there are so many other examples. I think it's worth mentioning that solutions to historic properties don't have to be bringing people to the property. Very often you can take the property to them. Our example at Iford is our Iford cider product, which is made on the estate, bottled and sold in pubs and restaurants around 100 miles up, at that sort of distance. It's an easy way for us to connect. There are online ways. Alexandre mentioned apps. There are plenty of those around which are trying to support historic properties. And D'Artagnan is a French company doing crowdsourcing for historic restorations. Another way of using modern methods to achieve historic aims. So all these activities have something in common, and this is the heart of what I want to say, really. They place the heritage at the heart of the community, and they make it relevant today and secure it in some manner for the future. This year, with the pandemic, more than ever before, I think we've seen people appreciating their heritage. frustrated and under house arrest, effectively, with the pandemic going on and lockdowns in many countries, people have, at the first opportunity, have rushed out to look for some countryside or a parkland. And where do they find it? Around the historic castle of the city. And if you go look in the Czech Republic at Castle Blatna, a wonderful house owned and managed by Stefanos Germanis and his mother, again, a cross-generational management team. They this year reported an absolute upsurge in numbers of people from the town rediscovering their heritage. They opened a coffee shop, and apparently it was quite profitable. So opportunity abounds. Especially poignant, I think, in the Czech Republic, where you've got a very turbulent history with historic property through pre-communist and then communist and then the restitution period. So those agile families living in their homes, passionate about their heritage, many of them having been passionate about it for 300 or 400 years, are imbuing that passion into their younger generation, finding clever ways to secure their future. And they are the lifeblood of historic houses. So harnessing the passion of that next generation is key. And the experience of the parents as well is that killer combination, as I say. It's an extremely powerful means of ensuring stability, relevance, and innovation. To help to nurture the enthusiasm and support of development in the younger generation to take on their properties, European historic houses have put together a strong focus on NextGen groups in what we do. So over the last 7 years, with support from the office in Brussels, I've helped the formation of national next generation groups across the continent, where young members of historic house owning families can now share best practice, meet each other, exchange ideas and challenges. Offering such a learning environment has, I think, been shown really in the UK particularly to be a very useful means of supporting innovative thinking. The UK group's been running for 45 years now, and it's just as useful as it was when it started. So every year at European level, we host a conference to bring together the most active of these young guardians of heritage. In 2016, we visited Vaux-le-Vicomte. It was a wonderful visit. This year, we should have been in Ireland. These are photographs from Italy and Spain. We go and visit the places that are full of people being passionate about their management. And this year, we're launching a Young Entrepreneur Award for young heritage owners. So to sum up, we can all do our bit. And I have to comment that, the work that the Indian Centre for Historic Houses is doing is really fantastic in bringing together people around this central subject. And so perhaps in India too, it's time for a NextGen Group, who knows, to support the next generation of historic properties, implementing their passion and protecting their family heritage for all of us to enjoy more into the future. Thank you.
Fantastic, William. Actually, I think we should introduce an applause, for our lectures. We're all waiting. It's really fantastic and so insightful. I didn't know about the Marmalade Festival. It really made me laugh.